several years with dedicated and devoted efforts. I would like to also to thank everyone involved for their hospitality. Um, and welcome to our workshop at ICCA. And now, the first presentation we are going to listen today is about the paper whose title is Estimating the Effect of TEC Data on Rain with Modeling and Wavelet Transformation Analysis with co-author Selçuk Döven, Büşra Nur Güdar, Khaled Al Nimer, and Zafer Aslan. Yes, over to you, please, to present your work.
Hi everybody. I hope that everybody is okay. May I share my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, please.
Tamam. Hadi sağ olasın.
Do you see my presentation?
Yes.
Everything is okay. Thank you.
Yes, it's okay.
You are welcome. Estimating the effect of the tech data on rain with modeling and wavelet transformation analysis. Contents, aim of study, study area, data, methodology, result and conclusion, and references. Firstly, I would like to read our studies abstract part. It is very important, short and very important part. Events such as geometric storms and solar winds cause significant changes and deterioration in the upper layers of the Earth's atmosphere. These distortions have a significant effect on the waves and signal used by the satellites and radios we use. Based on different satellite observations, studies on geometric storms, ionosphere, total electron content samples, and GPS observation, we can obtain some measurements. Another important natural event in measuring temperature and data and investigating its effect is rain. It is main our studies topic. In this study, it is aimed to determine the effect of tech change in the ionosphere on the daily prediction for Izmir, Trabzon, and Istanbul provinces of Turkey, and to determine whether the success of the algorithm used for different regions will change according to region, that is the data. The temporal variation of tech data for the period Journey 1, December 31, 2017 has been examined and modeled. In study, 60% of the one-year daily data was used for training, 20% for evaluation, and 20% for testing. In the first part of the study, wavelet transforms and large, medium, and small scale changes in the tech and predicted data were examined. In the second part of the study, tech data are modeled with artificial neural networks, support vector machines, and decision tree-based estimation methods. And in the last stage, machine learning algorithm and wavelet were used together to predict tech data. It is a hybrid system, and there is a successive evidence of observed and estimated tech data with alpha 0.05 significant level. And it is so much information and data about sun, about ionosphere, about raining, wind, and other things. I don't explain everything because it is very detailed presentation. I just explain shortly for you. It is so much study about prediction tech or rain connection, but first time Istanbul, Izmir, and Trabzon study relation rain and take data. Solar wind is very important things for take. Space weather effect is very important. Settlement and other signal parts. And ionosphere is very important for this study, of course. You could see detail about ionosphere. And you could see scale of atmospheric events. Radiant energy, again, important topics. Incoming solar radiation. Of course, radio channels is schedule is important. D-layer, E-layer, and P-layer. Every layer has a distance. And again, different view. Storms, remote sensing. Our study area and data. Our study area, Istanbul, Izmir, and Trabzon cities in Turkey. There are different locations, different geographic location and condition. Modeling, we use firstly machine learning techniques, multi-pair perception neural networks, support vector machine, decision tree. And after that, we use this machine learning with wavelet. What is wavelet? The wavelet transform is a mathematical technique which can decompose a signal into multiple lower resolution levels by controlling the scaling and shifting factors of a signal wavelet function, mother wavelet. As I told you, we use hybrid system. First, we use machine learning algorithm, and after that, we improved machine learning algorithm using with wavelet techniques. Wavelet tools don't just one option. There is so much option. We use one D tool for district wavelet analysis of signals. You could use a wavelet for not just for data, also image or other things. You could see wavelets detail in presentation after the presentation. And it is general concept about tech presentation, prediction, sorry. And it is a cycle, real world data. After that, we use model. After that, mathematical conclusion. And after that, predictions we will get. And after that, again, we train our data. And results in this section, you can observe the result of the application for the cities of Istanbul, Izmir, and Trabzon. For each province, an application was made with artificial neural networks, support vector machines, and decision tree based estimation, which are machine learning algorithms, very basic and popular algorithm. The R2, MCA, and RMCA values of each applications are listed, prediction. Then the trained data was transformed with wavelet as D1, D2, and D3. With this transformed wavelet data, machine learning algorithms work as a hybrid model to increase the success rate or ratio. Result of decision tree, D3 hybrid model shows better results with alpha 0.01. It is best solution. And you could see table 2 for Izmir for machine learning algorithm and hybrid system, not just machine learning algorithm, D1, D2, and D3. This better option, support vector machine for Izmir location, alpha 0.1 and 0. And table 3 show us Trabzon location. This location, for this location, ANN is best model. D2 2 hybrid model shows better result with alpha 0.05. As you see, every location work with different machine learning algorithm and wavelet algorithm hybrids. And last one, table 4 shows comparison model of all model. Result of decision tree. D3 hybrid model shows better result with alpha 0.01. And conclusion, this study was carried out within the scope of several purposes. First of all, it is determined whether there is a relationship between the take historical data and the raining prediction. If there is a relationship, estimating and increasing the accuracy by using the estimation rate as a hybrid of wavelet and machine learning algorithm. And finally, by examining the data of 3 different cities of Turkey with the same algorithm, it is observed how the performance of the algorithm change according to changing dataset. We saw actually every algorithm work better performance, better different location. As a result of the study, it has been determined that there is a linear particle relationship between tech and historical data rain. Although this situation is a different rates for all 3 cities, it has been observed that there is a strong relationship to certain extent. It has been determined that the prediction accuracy rate has increased significantly different location, but different location work with different algorithm and different wavelet level. When they analyzed the outputs of the application work, it was revealed that the algorithms didn't perform the same for every dataset, even though they were working with similar dataset for the same problem. With this result, it has been observed that different problems work with different accuracy rates by different algorithm, and that's the success rate of algorithm with different data in the same problem significantly changes. Significant levels have been changes from 0.01 to 0.10 for 3 selected study areas with tech data, observations, and estimations. And conclusion, as a result of study, the result of the 3 targeted cases were reached. After this study, other studies can be done to increase the reliability of the results. First of all, performance condition can be observed by working with different machine learning algorithm in these regions. We could see it will increase or reduce. We will check it. As another study, the dataset of 2017 from this study can be expanded, and the wider dataset by using long-term result can be examined. We will see different. We will able to see different results maybe. Finally, with the explanation of the dataset, performance condition can be compared by working with deep learning algorithm, which is an approach covered by the field of machine learning. If we have a long dataset, we will use deep learning algorithm also. And thank you so much for your listening. And there is references. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your work, which total electron content samples and GPS observations have been utilized to obtain measurements determining the effect of the total electron content change in the ionosphere on daily rainfall for 3 cities of Turkey. The study has significant contributions in geological events and shows the importance of accuracy modeling with AANs, support vector notions, and decision tree-based estimation methods. We would be pleased if there are some questions to be forwarded. I would like to ask one question, Dr. Selçuk. What are the strength and weakness of decision tree-based estimation method in relation to your subject matter?
Actually, if we have a little more large data, we could maybe increase our decision tree performance. I think that because there is just about 400 records. If we have a few years record, maybe we could increase decision tree performance a little better. It is my personal opinion. I hope that we will try it with other large data in the future. I hope that.
Okay, thank you very much. If no questions, we may go ahead with our next presentation. Okay, our next work is entitled Prediction of Wind Speed by Using Machine Learning, and co-authors of this paper are Uğur Şener, Buket İşler Kılıç, Ahmet Tokgözlü, and Zafer Aslan. If you are ready, over to you, please. Are you ready? I think that they aren't with us. So now in our workshop, we are going to listen to the presentation for the paper entitled A Computational Content Analysis on Representation in Mental Health, New Media with Global Perspectives, to be delivered by Ahmet Dursun. You may start, please.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to share my slide. Can everybody see it, please?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, esteemed professors, participants. I kindly welcome you to my presentation. I am Ahmet Dursun from Istanbul, Turkey. And today I will be delivering a presentation on my paper entitled A Computational Content Analysis on Representation in Mental Health News Media with Global Perspectives. Before moving on to the details, let me share the outline of my presentation. First, I'm going to talk about the background and objective of the study. Later, I will focus on the material and methods, covering the dataset details and computational as well as statistical dynamic models addressed under computational content analysis and multi-way frequency analysis. And following the sharing of the main findings obtained by experimental results of the study, I am planning to conclude with the conclusions and some of the related future directions. The news media are known to play an influential role in shaping public attitudes regarding a wide range of issues. This also applies to issues concerning health, public health, and social awareness, actually. And among many health issues, the ones about mental health and mental disorders are stated to stand as one of the most stigmatized of all human conditions worldwide. This note seems to be alarming, especially when the challenges experienced by numerous individuals in this particular group of representing themselves are considered. And there has been actually a positive shift in recent years towards improved advocacy, with more voice being developed and greater social awareness for people experiencing mental health problems. Campaigns and initiatives upholding positive mental health messages and challenging some commonly misinterpretations and misrepresentations, as well as some myths, have contributed a great deal to this kind of positive construction in the subject matter. However, negative representation of mental illness in media still prevails, still continues. And people with mental illness belong to the groups subject to some thoughtless kind of labeling from time to time. And negative aspects and assumptions get reinforced continuously. As a result of such processes, the perpetuating nature of stigma is revealed. As noted before, media representations can provide important symbolic resources in the construction of perception as well as agendas in diverse domains regarding wide range of issues. And language here acts as a critical means to construct meanings and maintain the dialogue among participants. It is also language which allows participants to build up a culture of shared understandings and interpret the world more or less the same ways. In other words, we may say that language operates as a representational system here, and language as a medium is actually considered to be the central part to the processes through which meaning is produced. Here we also have frames. Frames are alternative ways of defining issues related to social and political world. Frames are also parts of journalistic norms in media and social movements. And despite some variations in definitions, news frames on theoretical and empirical dimensions are generally regarded as devices to see the world in a certain way and make sense of its complicated nature. So the frames of meaning make up the mainstays of the construction process of social reality. We also call them cognitive schemas, acting as available shortcuts and templates for us to interpret people, facts, or events. On the other hand, frames also yield a mechanism allowing the storage of some realities in our minds so that they can be retrieved when needed. This mechanism contains the reality focusing on a certain frame, however, excluding some facets of the matters from time to time and excluding some other realities. Considering that some facts are expressed in a more dominant and prominent way and some are excluded, dominant media frames are said to be powerful in defining social problems and shaping public discourses. With this background, the aim of my study is to provide new insights into the news media representation of individuals that experience mental health problems. In addition, it aims at providing a different perspective in news media content analysis on these individuals' representation through grammatical analysis of voice of verbs and the frame of personalization by means of a computational application approach. So, following this introduction and background, let me now move on to the materials and methods part of the study. The dynamic media news data set, as the table shows, includes the newspaper items related to mental health with certain keywords selected. It covers a time period of 6 years from 2014 to 2019 in 6 most circulating daily newspapers in Turkey. The data set is made up of a total of 725 news items, which you can see the breakdown in the table. And the focus on the news items is on the presentation of people with mental disorder and grammatical language analysis of active-passive voice use in their depiction. As for the methods, under computational and statistical dynamic models with real-time mental health-related news, the related analyses include content analysis and computational frame analysis. The reason why such methods have been preferred is due to the features of dynamic models as simplified representations of real-world entities. They can be expressed sometimes in equations or computer codes, and their aim is to imitate some of the needed features of the system, while leaving out the less significant or inessential ones. Why they are also dynamic is because of the fact that they describe the change over time. And they also describe the change of the system properties over time. For these reasons, they are useful in the process of formulating models, analyzing, and drawing conclusions. What's more, computational modeling has become another approach set to enable the integration of diverse sources of data to test the probability of working hypotheses and bringing about novel ones. So in a way, this kind of methodology elicits a set of new approaches to address intricate problems in social sciences, behavioral sciences, and public health research. And the ultimate goal here is to serve for a deeper understanding of the problem as well as for its possible solutions. In this slide, figure 1 provides us with a visual depiction of this complementary approach in the context of mental health news via a computational frame and news media content analysis. Multi-wave frequency analysis is considered to be an appropriate way of analysis when the objective of the research is to determine if there is a relationship exists among 3 or more discrete variables. And in this analysis, mathematically, if the calculated x-square value is larger than the critical value, given the degrees of freedom and alpha value, statistical significance is stated to exist. And the following equations indicated in the slide are used to calculate the related degrees of freedom, which you may kindly see in this current slide. These denotations lead me to the next section, which is the experimental results and discussion. Grammatical analysis of language used in media news text can reveal the perspectives of the newspapers or journalists. And sentence syntax conveys the participants' semantic roles in an event by relational functions such as being a subject or being an object through the use of active voice or passive voice of the verb. As a result, when active voice is used, the agent is assigned a less prominent role. In addition, the issue of disempowerment also comes to the picture when health experts or health professionals in the news texts are assigned grammatical agency through the use of active voice, whereas individuals having mental illnesses are deprived of this kind of agency by the use of passive voice. And the data set analyzed based on this grammatical device of active and passive forms has revealed that individuals that have mental disorders are represented by active voice in 524 of the news items and by passive voice in 393 of the news items. Table 2 provides the breakdown of this linguistic aspect by newspapers. And below, figures 2 and 3 show their histogram depictions by newspapers and also over the 6-year time period of analysis, respectively. As the other leg of the study method, frame analysis, the model of Robert Entman, who is a prominent name in frame theory, is used. Entman actually identified 5 popular ways for framing news stories. These are conflict, human interest or personalization, consequence, morality, and responsibility. Based on these model elements, the study handled the human interest or personalization element with the frame of the success story of people with mental illness in the news items analyzed. And out of the total 725 news items, only 43 of the stories, which accounts for only 14%, actually mentioned a success element. This indicates an insignificant percentage statistically, We find a very similar percentage in another study in the literature, and it also found out that only 14% of the news stories provided a description of treatment or recovery from mental illness as examples of success stories. And in this slide, you can see some of the examples from the news excerpts about the success stories, like recovery from a mental illness. It is important because it is a process of change, and through this change, individuals improve their health and well-being. They struggle against the mental disorder. This is also a good step towards living a self-directed life, reaching the potential. And the other subsequent related success themes are integration into social life by finding a job or doing philanthropic acts like doing voluntary work, educating other people in the community, helping their community, conforming, obeying the socially accepted norms, and engaging in creative activities. So, in a compatible way, reporting stories of systemic issues around the topic of mental illness by giving place to the profiles of people with a mental illness who have become a part of their community, leading satisfactory lives with fulfilling relationships, corresponds to positive framing with personalization type. Despite making up a relatively smaller proportion of the entire news coverage, the emphasis on success stories with positive frames by favorable developments in their lives who have mental illness fits within the recommendations of some mental health initiatives, media initiatives, as well as some related councils and campaigns. With this line of recommendation, we can reach the conclusion and future directions. It is important to note that even a subtle change in language may pinpoint a change in perspective, since language is a critical tool of meaning and interpretation. The linguistic aspect of verb voice, which is to say the use of active or passive constructions in the sentence, as analyzed in the study, conveys the participants' semantic roles in an event. And when individuals with mental health problems are situated in the same news context with the health experts, the issue of disempowerment arises when health experts are given grammatical agency by active voice. So even though the number of news stories analyzed in the study has shown higher number of active voice construction compared to passive voice, this level of agency and instrument of grammatical analysis can be paid more attention in terms of reporting and journalistic practices in the future. This is one future direction we may come up with. And our second point of analysis was framing of news stories. And the conceptualization of personalization has been selected for this analysis of the data set. Despite showing a percentage that is not significant, which was 14%, actually inclusion of success stories like recovery from treatment, engaging in social life, it shows that it is possible for people to have active lives, to have fruitful lives, maintaining positive relationships, which can be an alternative way actually to balance the majority of news stories which link mental illness with negative elements like violence or sensational or exaggerated dramatic elements. So such shifts in news content and coverage have a humanizing global perspective. And with the changing phase of newspaper representations, these can initiate movement towards fostering a new culture of positive change and acceptance. This can also help reduce misconceptions and prevent social exclusion. So this, within a global and humanizing perspective, can benefit broader society in the long run, which is very important, with more accurate modeling and more accurate accounts of news. So this positive note brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for coming here and listening to me.
Thank you. From this presentation, we have listened to contributions. Just a moment, I have Just a moment. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you from this presentation. We have listened to contributions about the framing process as a mode analysis of news media content being dynamic in the concepts of communication. The analysis of newspaper stories on individuals with mental health problems reveals that coverage of positive tone stories frames can be a good alternative to balance the majority of the news stories that link mental illness with violence or other negative elements. Can I ask one question?
Of course, Professor. I would be pleased.
What are the benefits and further details of the multi-way frequency analysis in your study?
Thank you for the question. One aspect of multi-wave frequency analysis is related to its use when all variables are considered variables of interest, as this was the case in my research, and none of the variables in the analysis are dependent variables. When we think about frames, actually, frames are the dependent variable when we study the process of how they emerge, how they arise. And the independent variable is when we study the effects of frames actually on public, like frame setting. And these processes are also dynamic. So they also enable, dynamic models also enable us to examine the relationships that cannot be handled just based on experimental methods and projections. For these ways, with the steps of screening and then choosing and testing the appropriate models, as well as finally evaluating and interpreting the selecting model, this multi-way frequency analysis proves to be an accurate, appropriate model.
Okay. Would anyone like to forward a question related to this paper and presentation? Okay, thank you for your responses and for your presentation.
Thank you, too.
Yes, dear participant, let us now listen to next presentation regarding the study entitled "A Simple Implementation of an Entangular Circuits by Using Quantum Linear Optics" with Marco Simonetti and
Yes.
Taimana Perry and Osvaldo Garvasi as the co-authors. You may please start delivering your speech.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we are going to
Can you
share my screen.
presentation?
Just a moment.
Can you see my screen? Give me a feedback,
Yes,
please.
yes.
So I ended. Uh, I'm a PhD student of the University, and I'm a collaborator with the University of Perugia. And here I want to show, I want to introduce a simple implementation of an entangler by using quantum linear optics. This is my work. We can say that the topic of quantum computing is nowadays very interesting and in expansion, because it promises to have the potential to completely change the way we solve some difficult problems. And we can say that quantum computing topic is still in its infancy. So many challenges has to be faced before to say that we have a mature technology to do this kind of calculation. And we have two ways to do this kind of calculation. We can use fermion particles, and fermion particles like electrons or something similar, and they are undergone by the Pauli exclusion principle. So we can have only two states in the same quantum states, the zero or the one state. The other possibility to do quantum calculation is using photon chips. And if we use bosons in general or photons, is approach very, very interesting, because the photons have many advantages, such as travel long distance without significant loss, and they can be manipulated using linear optical devices, such as polarizer filter, phase shifters, and beam splitters. But they are still a little more complicated to be manipulated, because bosons don't respect the Pauli exclusion principle, and they have the tendency to bunch in the same quantum state. So we have the possibility to have many photons, many bosons on the same quantum states. So the mathematical structure we have to use is a little more complicated than the Hilbert space we use for classical qubit. We have three aspects we have to focus on, and the first is the difficulty for photons to interact with each other because their interaction is very weak. The second challenge for quantum computation using photon is the problem to have and to obtain a very ideal source for photon, single source photon. But another important problem is the difficulty to detect single photons with high efficiency. So we have two models when we use photons to do quantum computation. The first model is the quantum, the continuous discrete variable quantum model, and the discrete variable quantum model. Here in this work, I used the second one, that is the discrete variable quantum circuit, quantum model, sorry. And with this model, I have implemented an optical circuit. The first problem, the first issue we have to fix is to choose the right encoding, because we have many encodings when we use photons in this model. We have two different possibilities, two main different possibilities: the spatial modes encoding and polarization mode encoding. For spatial mode encoding, we can say that logical zero qubit can be implemented using two Q modes. And in the first one, we have one photon, and in the other, we have no photon at all. The logic 1 qubit can be represented as a zero photon in the first Q mode, and a single photon in the second Q mode. When we spoke about the spatial modes, we are intending that we use optical fiber or free propagation of the electromagnetic field. The other possibility is the encoding. Another possibility for the encoding is the polarization modes, where the logical zero qubit is the horizontally polarized wave, or logic 1 use the vertical ones. So what is the entangler? The entangler is a quantum circuit helpful for entangling two or more elementary particles. Entanglement is a very interesting property of the quantum particles that related to or more particles, even if they are very, very far. Entangler is a fundamental block to implement quantum computation, and it is very easy to implement when we use fermionic particles, but it's more and more complicated when we use bosons or photons in general. In some quantum algorithm, entangler is used to produce Bell's bases, and here we have the example of this basis. And so this is the entangler. We have the input states, and they are at the ground state, the zero state. Here we have the first stage, and it is the parallel of two blocks, the H gate, the Hadamard gate, and the X gate. After that, in series with the first stage, we have the second stage, and the second stage is composed by the C note, or the controlled note, or the controlled X gate. And here we can see the output state and the mathematical expression to obtain the result, the final result. As we can see here, we used Dirac notation and Dirac algebra to solve the problem. And here we have our result. And here we can see that the result and the final state is a perfect and symmetric superposition of two states, 0, 1 and ket 0, 1 and ket 1, 0. Here now we can see the two main components for quantum linear optics. Phase shifters, there are passive linear optical elements that change the phase of a beam of light. Here we have the input and the output. Here we can see that the output is shifted by an angle of theta, and at the on the left we can see the mathematical expression. Here we can see the Hamiltonian. Hamiltonian is necessary because it's a transformation that is shown when we use the Schrödinger wave equation. And the Hamiltonian of the system, and for this component, is given by the reduced Planck constant. Theta is the angle of the shift. And here we have the two operators, the creation operators for bosons and annihilation operator for bosons. And these operators are very important in quantum theory of fields. This is the transformation, the unitary transformation. And here we have the relationships between these two annihilation operator, the input and the output. The same speech for the beam splitters. Beam splitters are passive linear optical elements that split a beam of light in two or more beams. Here we have only the beam splitted in two, and theta is a parameter that links the transmittivity or reflectivity property of the photon, because a photon in input can be or reflected by beam splitter or transmitted through the beam splitter. Here we have the relationships between the input and the output. So how can we do our entangler using optics? The first stage, the stage with the tensor product by H and X gates, can be done like this. The H is composed by one beam splitter and 4 phase shifters. The same speech is for X. And after that, the C0 gates can be realized in this way. We have in literature two distinct forms to implement a C0. The C0, the post-selected C0 by Ralph, or the heralded C0 by Knill, Laflamme, Milburn. And the implementation can be in this way. We can implement in a classic way and using linear optics the entangler in this way. We have we had to add two farther Q modes. because we can say that CNOT in linear optics is not a deterministic gate, but we have the necessity to add some ancillary Q-mode to manage the result we obtain. Clearly, we can say we can do some simplifications, and our proposed entangler is made like this. We can say that our proposed entangler is the same of what we said here, because both of the realizations have the same unitary matrix for transformation, for the relationship between the input and the output. They have the same unitary matrix. After that, we can say that optical modes we labeled 0 and 5 are ancillary modes. That is, they are used to manage the result we obtain, because if we have photons in this in one of these two modes, there is an error for the result, and the result is not corrected. So we have two possibilities to encode the input here. In this table, we have the fermionic qubit, the classical representation when we use a Hilbert space for 2 qubits, or a bosonic qubit, we use the Fock space, and we can represent the state with this representation when we use where we used 6 Q modes. The ancilla are 0, and we expect they remain 0. And the first qubit for 0 is encoded as 1 photons and 0 photons. The 1 is 0 and 1 for the first qubit or the second qubit. Here we have some mathematical transformations, and here we are using the adjoint of our operation, because we have to use the creation operators. So we have the vacuum state at the initial state, and on this state we can apply the composition of these operators on the mode 1 and on the mode 3. So we obtain this result. We have 13, as we can see, the final state or the output state is composed by 13 states, quantum states. But the theory says that we had to expect at least 21 states. Where are the 8 states left? As we can see, we are the states that have 0 probability to arrive at the end of our circuit. So they are eliminated automatically by our circuit. So here we have the probability distribution of the result. We can notice that the component of our vector are complex numbers. So if we want to calculate the probability distribution, we have to do the modulus, and after that we have to square the single component of the vectors. After that, we have too many states, and as we've seen, our result is still made by only 2 states. So we have to filter our result. In the first stage, we have to measure the waveform, the wave, and after that we can eliminate the modes 0 and 5 because they have to be necessary 0 in input and 0 in output. So we can clear up all the state that are not necessary. After that, because our information must be composed by two photons, but they have to be alternate, we can delete all the state that are not necessary, like this one or this one, when we have two photons on the third Q mode. And after that, we obtain the result we were looking for. After that, I have conducted the simulation with Percival by Candela. Candela is a French company. I used their simulator, and what I obtained confirmed the theoretical result. So I have this probability distribution, and as we can see here we have exactly the state we were expecting. And here we have the initial state and the output state. For this vector, we have their complex components. After that, I put the circuit in a real photonic quantum computer. Also, French company Quandela has a real quantum computer, a real photonic quantum computer, a 12-mode photonic quantum computer. So I put my circuit in it, and I obtained this result when I ran 100,000 shots. So I obtain this frequency of the state. So the state we are interested are this one and this one, and these are the probability we obtain. After that, I filter out all the states that have photons in ancillary mode, or they don't alternate the photons in the information qubit, and I obtain exactly the same result that I was expected. So conclusions, we can say that quantum computing is an area that is growing and at very new potential to do some important computation and to solve very complex problem. But there are still significant challenges to be addressed, such as reliability and scalability for quantum hardware. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for your interesting work, which addresses a highly interesting topic, which is, so say, quantum computing. The application of quantum computing technologies.
If you have any questions.
Technologies has been on the rise with their challenges as well. Accordingly, the creation of an optimal rectangular, which is a...
Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
I have a question. He was angry, I think, that other person. Yeah, I think that I necessary. Yes, we are so sorry. We lived some technical problems, so that Dr. Marco also. We are so sorry. I have some questions about your presentation. Is it possible? No.
Sure.
Sorry, I can't hear anything.
Marco, can you hear us? Sorry for any misunderstanding, but we were talking with the microphone muted.
Today, all details is great.
Marco, are you still there?
Dr. Marco?
Ma tu senti o vedi qualcosa su YouTube?
Sorry, Alfonso, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Okay, so we had some questions.
Can I also ask a question? Yes. Could you please provide us with more details, if possible, on the quantum error correction application area of your scheme? Um, No, Marco.
Marco left the room.
I think internet connection.
The internet connection.
Okay, now he is here.
Okay, I'm here.
Yeah. We have some technical problems. So sorry. Can I ask one question?
Marco
No.
is
Okay.
in an area with the digital divide. So probably. In an area
Okay. Um,
hear us?
we are waiting Dr. Uğur. He will present their presentation. We are so sorry. He is living some technical problems. So we are trying to solve his problem. Thank you very much for your patience. Ay,
He's trying by using his smartphone through the GTMate app, and I suggested him to shut down the Wi-Fi and use the mobile data because maybe it's a problem of the Wi-Fi connection because if two computers and the smartphone don't work, maybe the problem is with the Wi-Fi.
I don't know. I think he will not.
Dr. Sanar, can you hear us? Can you hear us? No.
No. Next time you present your presentation. Ramiano. He's asking me, are you seeing me?
It's in Turkey.
Yeah.
But can you hear us?
But the voice is this one?
Yeah.
You see, I don't know why, but I am no more the moderator of this.
This room?
Yeah.
With which account?
With which account? User 02.
He's not.
The user
Heard
02 is
us.
not.
Ma come ci sono entrato qua? Io sono qua.
And you are not the moderator here?
No.
But this is your computer?
Yes. Perché ci stiamo parlando in inglese, tra l'altro?
Because we need to talk in English.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, if you
Hello, this is Uğur speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can see you and we can hear you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I can hear you also.
Okay.
Here,
Now I'm going to share your presentation.
Our technical support.
Yeah.
Alfonso.
I am truly sorry for inconvenience. Probably there is a problem. Our university is internet. When I turn to with your suggestion to phone internet, it is corrected.
Okay.
And
It's
I
working.
am ready to do the presentation now.
Okay. Can you share from? Are you using your smartphone?
Yes, I am connected from smartphone.
Okay. So now I'm going to share your presentation.
I'm sorry for inconvenience. Thank you for your available as a help.
Don't be. No problem at all. No problem at all. Just one moment. I'm going to share your presentation. Okay. Can you see it?
I see. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, you are welcome. So please, the floor is yours.
Yeah.
Tell me when I have to scroll down the slides, okay?
Thank you. I am sorry for the inconvenience about the technical problem. We would like to present our paper about 1 minute. Yes. We would like to present our paper about wind speed prediction by using both statistical and also machine learning methods as well as their hybrids. Our paper is a part of our research project, Cube for Environmental Security Program of NATO. My colleagues are Buket İşler, Ahmet Gökgözlü, and Zafer Aslan. She is the coordinator of our project. And if you please pass the next slide, I would like to start. I will make a brief introduction, then I will talk about the background of the research and literature, then I will summarize the methodology, then I will present you the results, both statistical and graphical, and then I will make a brief discussion. And next slide, please. Our objective is prediction of wind speed and wind energy potential in Antalya Serik region, which is a part of Mediterranean climate, Mediterranean region. And we would like to compare some performance of selected hybrid forecasting models. Next slide, please. Renewable energy is becoming more popular because European Green Deal has been forcing countries to reduce their carbon emissions. And there is an objective carbon-free environment at 2035. And to reach this objective, increasing the renewable energy potential is critical for the member countries. This is why we selected this topic, and we are measuring wind energy and solar energy potential in Mediterranean region as a part of our project of Peace for Security program at NATO. We used ARIMA methodology, one of our models, but the wind speed has a seasonal nature, so we use seasonal ARIMA. And also there is no trend in the data, so the model is called seasonal ARIMA model. And we included an explanatory variable to SARMA model. This explanatory variable is the with seasonal exponential smoothing forecast, daily seasonal exponential smoothing forecast of the wind speed again to a kind of include a daily guide to the forecasting model. And we use nonlinear autoregressive model and nonlinear autoregressive neural network with an explanatory variable. This explanatory variable is provided by wavelet transform in another hybrid model. We use wavelet NARIX hybrid model. Here, wavelet output is an input for NAR model, and when there is an explanatory variable in NAR model, it is called NARIX. And I will detail explain in literature part. And we used Zhang's methodology to reach Sarmax NAR and the reverse NAR Sarmax hybrid. In here, this methodology is relying on the argument that when there is a linear and nonlinear pattern in the data, ARIMA methodologies can model the linear trend, and then the residuals will contain the nonlinearity, and the residuals will be forecasted with NAR model. Next slide, please. Now we see the region where it's on the Mediterranean coast of Turkey, the Antalya city, the Serik town of Antalya city. It's in the central part of Antalya between 36-37 northern latitude and 31-32 eastern longitude. And its altitude is 26 meters above sea level. Next slide, please. I would like to try to briefly explain the models, forecasting models we have used here. ARIMA model combines autoregressive components with moving average components, and autoregressive components consist of actual variable, and it is a lagged versions to use serial correlation in the data for its benefit, converting a problem to its advantage. And a finite moving average process contains a finite moving average process contains the residuals obtained from a regression model, and it is lagged versions. When these both models are used in a difference data, it is called ARIMA for trending data, and for stationary data without trend, it's called an ARMA model. We include the seasonal component to this model. Transfer function models can be used to include explanatory variables to any ARIMA methodology, and also seasonal ARIMA methodologies. We forecasted this wind speed, the hourly wind speed data with seasonal exponential smoothing model, where the period is 24, to represent a daily guide to our data set. Nonlinear autoregressive models use similar to R component of ARIMA model, lagged variables to the input neurons as in the input level, and in the middle we used in the hidden level 6 nodes. We used in this NAR model 72 hidden neurons, 72 autoregressive neurons, which means a kind of 3 days data are used, 3 days multiplied by 24, 72 autoregressive inputs are used here as 3 days. And NARIX model, as we explained a few minutes ago, uses wavelet output in the hybrid model. In Starmax-NAR methodology, first, the data is for the wind speed data is forecasted with Starmax method. The forecast and the residual series are obtained. Then residual series in this approach, residual series contain the nonlinearity, because besides seasonality, StarMax model forecasts the linear part of the data, the linear pattern in the data, and the remaining nonlinearity is in the residuals, and the residuals are forecasted with the NAR model to model this nonlinearity, and forecasted residuals are summed with the SARMAX forecast to obtain the final forecast. NAR SARMAX hybrid has the reverse methodology. The methods NAR and SARMAX change their places. In the wavelet NARIX method, wavelet is used as an explanatory variable beside these 72 autoregressive inputs to the model. Next slide, please. Yes. Next, please. We use the data set, an hourly data set of 7 years, in which 6 years are used as a training set, and the last year, 2022, is our test period. There were approximately 200 missing data points in the data. We used linear extrapolation to fill these points. We used both max-min normalization and z-score normalization before applying the statistical and machine learning approach to our dataset. In our case, max-min normalization responded better. As we said, we divided our data as training and test periods. First, we used the training dataset to make our forecast to train our nets. And if we obtained the model, with this obtained model, we forecasted the test period and calculated the performance measures there. Then we compare the selected models according to forecast accuracy measures. Next slide, please. Yes, we use hourly wind speed data in terms of meter divided by seconds. So 1 year contains 8,760 data points. And in some models, we used 6 years training period. And in some models, we used 2 years, 2020 and 2021 as training periods. In all models, 2022 is our test period. And next slide, please. We see here the NARIX wavelet. First, we used a nonlinear autoregressive neural network to forecast the data. Then we include wavelet output D2 to this model. And we have observed that including wavelet to NAR model improves the forecast accuracy. Here, the blue region here is our training period. Red region is the test period 2022, and the green region is our future forecast of 2020. Next slide, please. In this slide, we see the training period for the other models. On the left top, we see the actual wind speed for 2020 and 2021. We observe a seasonality here. 2 years are similar. We observe it. On the right side of the wind actuals, we see the NAR forecast. And below level is the NAR SARMAX and SARMA model, and SARMAX NAR hybrid and SARMAX forecast. From a visual inspection, we see that SARMAX NAR hybrid looks like the most in the training period to actual wind speeds. Next slide, please. Now we see 2022 data, our test periods. The same SARMAX and produced SARMAX model and SARMAX produce similar patterns. In fact, all models produce acceptable results here. Next slide, please. Now we see the forecast accuracy measure for training data. Here we see that NAR model produced very good results. NAR SARMAX hybrid also calculated mean square error, root mean square error, mean absolute error, mean percentage error, and mean absolute percentage error, and symmetric mean absolute percentage error, and tails U1 and U2 statistics to see this comparison from different statistical perspectives. In general, all models produce very successful results. from a percentage kind of in terms of 20% for forecast error for 1 year. And in the next slide, we see 1 month forecast. First, we calculated for the test period's first month as a short-term forecast. Then we calculated the whole of 2022 as a long-term forecast. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, the percentage error, mean percentage error, and mean absolute percentage error, we couldn't calculate it because when there are 0 values in the data set, 0 wind speed, the denominator of this statistics becomes 0, so it converges to infinity, diverges to infinity. But symmetric MAPE can be calculated because here the denominator is the absolute value sum of actual and forecast. Here, wavelet NARIX model produced best results compared to, in short term, other models also. The kind of, in all statistics, produce better measures, except U2. In U2, StarMax produced good results according to U2 statistic. But we can say that all are acceptable results, all models. In the next slide, please, we will see the long-term forecast.
Dr. Sener, sorry to interrupt you. I have to remind you that you have only 3 minutes left. So if you want...
Thank you. We are on the quite finishing. Thank you for your kind reminder.
You are welcome. Sorry for rushing you.
No. I just organized this for 20 minutes. Into 3 minutes, I will finish.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Now we see the long-term forecast.
Okay.
In the long-term forecast, wavelet NARIX hybrid is also better than in general from other models, this 1 year forecast periods. And when including wavelet output, the NAR model improved the hybrid model. And the next slide, please. Yes, in our paper, we compared statistical and machine learning forecasting approach, and we use their hybrids. In general, hybrids models improved forecast accuracy, and in training period, it's something like with 20%, and to compare it with test period, and in test period, we reach something like 30% forecast error. I would like to gladly answer your questions. Thank you for listening to me. I'm again sorry for inconvenience for this connection problem. I would like to say again that this is our paper is a part of project Cube for Environmental Security funded by NATO. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention and patience. We are going to next section, 30:30. See you there, please. others, all professors with me. So I have to go.
Yeah. Please, please.
The
should see the breakdown page. Okay. Now I will grant you moderator rights, and I have to exit the virtual room and go to another.
Yeah, that's fine. And I will organize this here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Hey, so you can join also. We have no technical assistant yet. Yeah, I will start the session in a little bit, and we can also both moderate.
My name is Carmelo.
I know you.
Nice to meet you. Okay.
Umberto.
I'm Sicilia.
Okay.
First in Italy and Sicilia.
Okay.
Maybe I had some grandfather that was Greek.
Okay.
And, one grandmother that was
Sorry.
Arabic.
Who's the chair?
We are both the chairs.
Okay, I'm your technical assistant,
Okay,
and
fine.
I cannot open the room because we have still a presentation.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
We were rushing from our previous presentation, so that's fine.
Okay. Do you have the drone here? Are you playing with the Wi-Fi connection?
Yes.
Do you want the cable? No.
So far, it's good.
Okay.
Do you think it's better to switch off with the two computers or one?
I think if you agree, we can use this computer. Okay?
Okay.
And then I can move.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So should I open the room from your?
Yes.
Or you already did that?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the room is open. You can start whenever you want. I think that you will be okay to share. Sorry, let me check. Yes, you have rights. At the moment I have my laptop, I will join as a moderator as well. I think
Okay.
that you were okay to start whenever you like.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You are from Portugal?
Yes.
Roja.
Yes.
Okay.
You are only seeing me from behind, so yeah, we've met a lot of times. Okay. So,
You know Professor Roca?
of course. She is also Russia.
Russia.
Yes. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, I'm just trying to see if I see the lineup. Oh, here it is. Okay. So I can do the first three, and then you do the last two, because the first three are from the session we are organizing, COA, and I believe the last two are from your session or your sessions. Is that true?
For me, I just take a look to the abstract if I can, or
Yeah.
is it easier?
Yeah.
Let me know if my PC works, because it should be charged, and I can take a look. So it will be easier. Oh, it's a bit warm.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
not cold. So try to balance it very. Who knows? I have a friend from Portugal. The name is Luis Luna. His name is Virginia, but he's more or less 60 years old.
Okay, very nice.
We were student of European Master Erasmus, was between among
Okay, so good afternoon all. We are starting this session. It's a mixed session of the computational optimization approach and two other sessions or streams from Professor Carmelo. I will start with the first presentation, which is OR in hospital admission, and I will ask for Mario or Ana Paula Teixeira, if they are in the line, to share their screen and start the presentation if they want. I'm not sure if any of them are in the room. Yes, either Mario or Ana Teixeira. We will wait and we will keep schedule. So if they are not in the room, the next presenter will be Angela Ferreira. I see it's in the room. And the schedule is 10 to 6 here in Greek hours. So it should be 10 to 4 in Portugal. So we will wait a little bit. Is that okay, Angela?
Dear Humberto, how are you? Everything is okay with you? I have André Pedroso here. He is the first author, and he will be presenting our paper. And I believe, if you want, that he can start earlier. If you don't want to wait for the first presentation, he can start earlier. I believe so.
Okay, thank you. We will wait a little bit, and if needed, if no one shows from the first presentation, I will move on to the second presentation. And I see Rommel is already here, so I will also have the third presentation. How are you, Rommel?
Good. Sorry. So I'm the third presenter, right?
Yes, yes. But the first ones are not here for some reason, and if they are not here in a couple of minutes, we will move on to the next presentation.
So I'll just mute myself for a second.
Okay.
Give me a couple of minutes because I'm going to
Okay, so I assume that the first presenters forget or are not available. So we will move on to the second presentation, and we'll ask for André to share the screen and start the presentation whenever you want. Go ahead, André.
Yes, hello. Just a second. So, hello everyone. My name is André Pedroso, and I will present the article with the name Hybrid Genetic Algorithm for Optimal Active Power Curtailment, Consider Renewable Energy Generation. And the authors of this paper, they are myself, the researcher Yaya Moura, and professors Angela Ferreira and Ana Pereira. So at first, I'd like to explain the context of writing this paper. And for that, we have some topics that I would like to approach. There are first the energy sector transition, which can be characterized basically by the dysregulation of the power system, but also with the high integration of intermittent energy generators that are for example, the wind power plants and also the solar power plants, and also the integration of electrical equipments like electrical vehicles and storage systems and other equipments that are increasing the complexity of the power systems. So one of the effects of this transition is the renewable energy curtailment. What is that? Well, that's what happens when there is the excess of energy production or a low consumption of energy, and the grid operator, they may decide to cut part of the generation in order to avoid overvoltage or transmission line congestions. And well, we don't like we wouldn't like that, because that can disencourage some investors to enter to the renewable energy sector, but also it can be considered a waste of resources. And for that reason, many countries, they adopt policies that disencourage, they are penalized the energy curtailment. And for example, we have the European regulation of internal market for electricity, which establish a limit of the renewable energy curtailment, which must be respected by the energy operator. And in this regulation, it is also determined that the rate dispatch of the energy, they must be in a non-discriminatory characteristics. That means that the energy curtailment, it must be distributed fairly among the generators that are connected to the grid. And for that reason, so some methods has been proposed to reduce the curtailment of the energy. Some of them are the storage systems, but also we have better forecasting methods. And in what we will approach in this paper is the optimal operation of the grid. So regarding the optimal operation, for applying these methods, it's necessary to solve a problem that is known as the optimal power flow, where the dispatch of energy is optimized in order to achieve a defined objective. And the optimal power flow is usually applying a day ahead, short-term or long-term planning operations. Is that we will determine how the dispatch of the energy will behave next day or next week or even through the year. And by applying the OPF, it is possible to achieve an optimal operation, but also respect some limits of the grid as the voltage and frequency levels, and also keep a stable operation of the grid. And the OPF, it can be divided in two types, which is the DC OPF, is the linear solution. And in this case, we can use linear programming, quadratic programming, and other algorithms to solve it. But it's not a complete representation of the power systems. And other type of problem we can approach is the ACOPF. This one represents much better the power systems, but however is a non-linear and a non-convex problem, and can be quite complex to solve depending on the size of the grid or the equipments that are connected to the grid. And in this case, we can use non-programming algorithm or interior point methods, or even PSO was some examples of some algorithms that were applied to solve this problem. So here I'll give a simple overview about this paper, the work we've done. And here we will analyze the application of the hybrid GA algorithm to solve the OPF problems with additional constraints in order to restrain the curtailment of renewable energy. And three algorithms will be compared in this study. They are the GA hybrid algorithm, the active set method, and the interior point method. And we will perform some simulations in the Matplotlib MatPower, where we have 4 exemplary days to represent a new operation of the power systems. And then we will see the results to show whether the deterministic methods, the heuristic methods have benefits over the deterministic methods. So here I'll give an overview of the optimal power flow problem. The standard optimization problem that can be described by our objective function that here is described by the function f, and which must be minimized subject to the equalities and inequality constraints that are represented by the function g and h in this case. And in power system application, usually the objective function is describe functions that are like the generation cost, transmission losses, environmental impacts, and optimal voltage profiles. And in this case, the equality constraints of these problems, they are the power flow equations, and inequality constraints of the problems are usually security and technical limitations of the grid. And also the variables that are considered in these problems, they are usually the voltage angles and magnitude, and generators, reactive power, and active power as well. In this slide, I will present the power flow equations. They are described in the equation below. This function, they describe the flow of the energy through the lines of the grid, and by means of the voltage magnitude, its angles, and also the characteristics of the grid. And in this figure here, we have a simple representation of electrical grid representation. So in our case, we have some additional constraints. Some additional constraints was added to the problem in order to deal with the limitation imposed by the European Energy Regulation. And this first equation, here we calculate the percentage curtailed energy, but for each generator, and by means of the maximum power of the generation and the power that will be dispatched by this generation. And this value was limited by 5%, which is the maximum value allowed in most of the European countries. And in this other equation here, we have the goal of maintaining a non-discriminatory operation of the grid. And we do that by limiting the standard deviation of the total energy curtailed in the renewable generators. And in the maximum value that we considered in this case was 1%. So here I present the case study that was built for testing the algorithm. In the figure 2, we have a electrical diagram of the E3 14 bus example network, which is composed by 5 generators, 11 loads, and 20 transmission lines. And for this study, 3 of these generators, they were replaced by renewable generators. The generator 3 were considered a wind power plant, and the generators 6 and 8, what they were considered to be solar power plants. And regarding the loads of this problem, they were modeled using real data of residential and industrial loads. As mentioned before, like for simulating a new operation, we built 4 exemplary days to represent the 4 seasons of the year, and each of these days they have different generation and loads profile. And in order to model the wind generation and the solar generation, we use 4 years data of wind speed and irradiation values. And by analyzing these values, we were able to create a profile of how this generation would be the profile of the generation in each season. And here in this equation left, we have a representation of the mathematical model of the wind generator. And in the equation at the right, we have a mathematical model of the solar power generators. And in this figure, we have just an example of how is the generation and the load on a winter season, in our case. Here we have the objective function used in this case study, which is the transmission loss minimization. It is calculated by summing all the power injected in the grid and also all the power injected to the grid and also all the power consumed in all buses of this grid. And in this table, we have all the lower bounds and the upper bounds of the problem, which are we have the voltage, the angles, and also the power that is being transmitting in each line of this of the grid. Well, as mentioned before, like we use two deterministic methods for solving the OPF problems, and we also compare them to the hybrid J algorithm. And they are the interior point method and the active set method. And both of these algorithms, they are very robust in dealing with the nonlinear problems, but they cannot guarantee the global optimal solution. And at the figure 3 and figure 4, we have just a simple representation of how each one of these algorithms deals with the constraints of the problem in its own way. Here I will give a fast explanation of how the GA algorithm works. And this GA algorithm is a population-based algorithm that utilize natural selection and genetic features in order to find a global optimal solution. And well, the algorithm, it begins by defining a random initial population, as shown here. And each of these individuals, of this population, they has chromosomes that represent the variables of the problem. And after initializing, each individual is evaluated based on the optimization function. And after that, the most fittest individuals, they are selected for crossover, which generate the next population. Well, some of these individuals, they undergo mutation, which increase the capacity of the algorithms to discover optimal solutions that have been overlooked for the previous population. And when the algorithms reach the maximum generation value or is unable to improve the solution, it chooses the best. It chooses the best individual as the final solution of the problem. In the case of the hybrid algorithm, here we have the additional parts. After defining the final solution, the algorithm, you run a deterministic algorithm and find the local optimal solution. And also, just to have a representation here in this figure, we have just a representation of how the J can find some of the optimal solution of the problem. Well, here I present the results of this paper. And at first, the problem was approached by only applying the constraints of the constraints that limited the curtailment to 5% of the value. And in this case, which is represented in this figure here, like all the algorithms, they were able to find the optimal solution. However, the interior point method was much slower in finding to convert to a result, and compared to the GA algorithm and the active set method. And the active set method and the GA algorithm, the hybrid GA algorithm, they took almost similar time to find it, but GA was a little bit faster. Well, however, after we apply the non-discriminatory constraint, which is the constraint regarding the standard deviation values of the generator, the deterministic algorithms, they were unable to converge for a solution, which makes, in some cases, which makes it impossible to continue the algorithm. And in this case, only the hybrid J was converged for all the solution, as we are showing here in this table. For last, here in this table, we have the results of the annual operation of the grid, and using the hybrid J algorithm. And as we can see, like we have the losses of the system was below 2%, which was acceptable values. And the curtailment of each renewable energy generator, they were below the established 5% limit. And also between this curtailment, the standard deviation among these generators, they were below 1%. But that means that it respects both constraints that was established before. So just have a fast summary of what was presented. Like this work, we propose to implement in a J hybrid algorithm to solve the optimal power flow problem with additional constraints to address the renewable energy curtailment. And the results, they indicate that implementing the GA hybrid algorithm, they can improve the time required to solve the optimization problem, but also improve the feasibility rate of this problem. And for our future work, we would like to compare different heuristic algorithms to solve this problem, but also introduce some storage systems to mitigate the curtailment of energy. So thank you for the attention.
Thank you. Very nice presentation. Does anyone have any questions in the room? So I will thank you again, Andre and Angela, for your nice work. And we'll move on to the next one, to Rommel. And Rommel, whenever you want, you can share your screen and start your presentation. Thank you.
So let me share the screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it. Just please put full screen.
Okay. All right. So is that good? Okay. So all right. So I guess I'm going to start now. So my talk is about using surrogate-based methods, particularly radial basis function and Bayesian methods for the hyperparameter optimization of classification random forest. So random forest is an ensemble of decision trees built from bootstrap samples of the training data set. So this is one of the most popular machine learning and predicting modeling tools that are used for classification and regression problems. So here's a simple picture. So you're basically using an ensemble of decision trees. Usually there's potentially hundreds of these decision trees that are used to perform, let's say, a classification or regression task. But for this particular talk, I'm focusing just on classification problems. So it is well known that the predictive performance of a random forest depends partly on the setting of its hyperparameters. In this case, I'm looking at 4 particular hyperparameters, which are the number of trees in the ensemble, number of predictor variables drawn randomly for each split in the decision trees. It's the minimum number of samples in a node, the fraction of training set drawn randomly with replacement for building each tree. And the optimization problem is, of course, to find the setting of these hyperparameters that optimize a measure of predicted performance of the random forest. And so that could be, you might want to minimize the overall out-of-bag prediction error, or maybe, again, in the case of classification, maybe maximize overall out-of-bag accuracy, overall out-of-bag F1 score, or AUC. So these are just some of the standard metrics that are used for classification problems. So the hyperparameter optimization of machine learning models in general can be formulated as a black box optimization problem. So in this case, we would like to find an approximate optimal solution to a vector theta to the following optimization problem. So, and in this case, we're going to simplify things and consider only discrete ordinal settings for this vector theta. So I might want to minimize E of theta. So E of theta could be the overall out-of-bag prediction error, or maybe maximize out-of-bag accuracy. So either one of those. And again, this theta here, each of these thetas, the components of this vector theta, they correspond to the hyperparameters of the machine learning model, or in this case, a random forest. And DI here is a set of all possible settings of those hyperparameters. Now, here are some approaches for hyperparameter optimization. I mean, if you look at the literature, at least the standard textbooks, among the approaches that people use would be grid search, random search and meta heuristics, particle swarm, evolutionary algorithms, and all sorts of things. So the downside of these are that, for some hyperparameter optimization problems, they can be very expensive when you're dealing with very large data sets. So if you're looking at data sets where there's hundreds of thousands or millions of instances, or maybe where there's thousands of predictor variables, that objective function in this problem can easily become expensive. So which is why some people have started using surrogate-based approaches, particularly Bayesian optimization techniques. So there's actually a lot of this in the literature. These are just some examples. There's also an algorithm called HORD, which uses a radial basis function model. This was used for a convolutional neural network, and also recently used what I call B-Condor RBF, which was used for random forest for regression problems. And there's also trust region algorithms out there. Here's an example. And again, there's other methods. I'm just giving a sampling of some of the methods that people have used. My goal, of course, is to explore the use of RVF and Bayesian optimization methods to optimize hyperparameters of a classification random forest. So just a brief review of, for those unfamiliar with Bayesian hyperparameter optimization. So in Bayesian optimization, you build a probabilistic model for the objective function that yields a surrogate of the objective, and also a measure of uncertainty that's used to guide the selection of those sample points. So here we assume that this E of theta, which is our objective function, is modeled by a Gaussian process. And here we're simplifying things and assuming a constant mean, mu theta equals mu, and two types of covariance functions. Now, there's other types of covariance functions, but in this particular study, I considered the Gaussian and the Mathern 5/2 covariance functions. And again, the Bayesian optimization is sort of well studied. If you're given data points, so in this case, theta 1, psi of 1, these are the hyperparameter settings and the corresponding objective function values. If you're given those data points, you can fit a Gaussian process model using maximum likelihood estimation. And that function value of a new point, theta star, will also have a Gaussian distribution with mean and variance given by, again, some standard formulas that are well known. And of course, your predicted value is your mean. And then the variance gives you a measure of uncertainty in the predicted value for your objective. And here we utilize, now notice that we're dealing with discrete Bayesian optimization. When it started was used for continuous type optimization problems. So here we have to sort of adapt a little bit to deal with the discrete settings of the hyperparameters. So I use some kind of a discrete EI method, which is basically an algorithm for bound constrained optimization with discrete decision variables using that GP model. And here the goal is, of course, that sample point is the one that maximizes the expected improvement within that discrete search space. And it's, of course, in this case, I'm doing it approximately. The B-Condor algorithm, on the other hand, is also among the few surrogate-based methods for bound-constrained discrete black box optimization. And I've used it with radial basis function surrogates for hyperparameter tuning for regression-type problems. And I note that RBF-type methods have been rarely used for hyperparameter optimization in general, compared with Bayesian optimization, which is way more popular. But I'd like to show in the experimental results that you can achieve similar, if not better, performance with RBF on some type of these hyperparameter optimization problems. So here's a general outline of the B-Condor algorithm. Just like any surrogate-based method, you evaluate an initial set of points. And then within every iteration, you fit or update your surrogate for the objective. In this case, I use a radial basis function. I generate random trial points within the search space. In this case, it's a discrete search space according to some probability distribution. And then your next sample point is just a best trial point according to a weighted ranking of scale values of two criteria, which could be the predicted value of the objective function, and also minimum distance between the trial point and previous sample points. The idea being you'd like to evaluate sort of far from points that you evaluated before. And of course, once you've selected your sample point, you evaluate there, and then you just iterate. So it's really a simple algorithm. This is the radial basis function model that was used. It's a standard radial basis function model that includes a polynomial tail, typically a linear tail. And again, in this case, the x1, xi, f of xi, these correspond again to the hyperparameter settings and the corresponding objective function values. So given those data points, you can fit this kind of model. This is the radial basis function part, and then you have typically a linear tail that's augmented to it. It's fitting the model is actually very fast. It solves, it involves solving a simple linear system. And it has been used for high dimensional problems with hundreds or even thousands of decision variables. Numerical experiments are conducted in R via RStudio. I use the Reindeer R package to train and evaluate random forests on data sets. This package provides a fast implementation of the random forest algorithm. It's very well suited for high dimensional data. And then the two algorithms, bcondor RVF and discrete AI with some variants using, so I have a global and local search version of this RVF method. And there's, I use different, two kinds of kernels for the Bayesian algorithm. So these are applied to random forest hyperparameter optimization problems on 10 classification data sets with up to 753 predictors and up to 19,000 data points. And of course, these algorithms were compared with, random search, which people use. So I have a global and a local random search versions. This gives you an idea of the characteristics of the classification problems that were used. So I have number of predictors ranging from 7 up to 753 here. These are different number of classes. So it's not all binary classification problems. Number of data points. There's, one of them has 19,000 data points. And this also gives you an idea of the size of the search space. And again, I'm doing this in a computationally expensive setting. So when I run the algorithms, I'm going to limit the number of function evaluation to a much smaller number than the search space here. So the objective function, again, that represents, for those problems, the objective function represents the overall out-of-bag prediction error of the random forest. So I have some reasonable settings of the hyperparameters. These are settings that are typically used in the literature. It actually gives you the size of the search space, 1100 times p, where p is the number of predictors. We also do normalization of the variables, which is typical with many surrogate-based algorithms. And in addition to that, when I run this hyperparameter optimization methods, I also include the point that corresponds to recommended hyperparameters. The idea being, there are well-known settings that people use that are recommended literature. So I use it as a starting point, and and I'd like to determine whether if we can do better than the recommended hyperparameter settings. So these are just some results. It's a comparison of the best overall out-of-bag prediction error obtained by the various methods. So these are the problems, the tuning problems. Here on the left, there's actually two sets of tables here. I looked at up to 20 times d+1 function evaluations, but since there's only 4 hyperparameters, so this is really equivalent to 100 function evaluations. So it's limited to 100 function evaluations relative to that search space, and that includes initial points that are that you do before fitting any kind of surrogate models. So blue here, so these are giving you the overall the out-of-bag prediction error for the various algorithms at each of these budgets. The blue are the best, and then the magenta second best. And you can easily eyeball, and you can see that most of the blues, the magentas, are with the surrogate-based method. So these are other pictures. We have the blue and the magenta here are the bcondor RVF algorithms. The green and the orange are the Bayesian optimization algorithms. Red here is random search, global random search, and the blue, there's a local random search that's actually doing quite well, even relative to Bayesian optimization. So a simple tweak of a random search method can be, you can do sort of much better than just plain global random search. So here's other results. Again, looking at some of the other problems. So overall, just to summarize this, so the main message here is that comparing the surrogate-based methods, you definitely get much better results with surrogate-based methods relative to this, random search, which a lot of people use for hyperparameter tuning. So you can definitely improve on that. It's actually pretty consistent with some results that other people have obtained. The other thing is that among the surrogate-based methods, this bCondor RVF, the global version in particular, appears to have the best performance, at least on the 10 classification problems that are used here. The other thing is that the local variant, there's a local variant of the RVF model. It's an improvement over that discrete local random search. But even that discrete local random search actually performs better consistently than a global random search. And then finally, within the Bayesian algorithms, the one that uses the math-trend 5/2 kernel actually obtained generally better results than the one using the Gaussian kernel. And I forgot to mention also that the the discrete local random search method actually, one of the bCondor, one of the local random search methods is actually able to obtain comparative performance with some of the Bayesian algorithms in some of the problems. And I think that's it. So thank you for your attention. Are there any questions? Questions? Or?
Thank you so much. Wait, just a sec. We are having an interference here.
Oh, okay.
Well, is that okay? Some problems. Thank you so much for your nice presentation. Does anyone have any questions for Rommel? No. I would like to thank again for Rommel and
Hi, Rommel.
Hi.
all the
Thank you
other
very much. Thank you for having me in this session.
co-participants for submitting their papers and for doing their presentations. Thank you so much for your work, and hope to see you in the next edition. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Now, the final part of this session will be for the two final presentations will be for presented by Carmelo Torre, and he will continue with the last two presentations. Go ahead. You can sit here. No, you can sit here. No one is logging.